So good afternoon, everyone. I want us all to imagine a world in which everyone in the Northeast can access an abundance of fresh, healthy, and locally produced food. And New York's food system matters to make this possible. Why? First, climate change. Now, NASA has affirmed that one of the biggest impacts of climate change is that drier regions are getting drier and wetter regions are getting wetter. And right now, the majority of the food that Americans eat that is produced domestically comes from the western and southern parts of the United States. So those are actually our primary food sheds. And yet they are facing a water crisis. Let's look at some maps. This is a NASA map, and it reflects the drought conditions in our country. And I've overlaid their map with USDA agricultural census data showing the top 10 states with land and farming. And I want you to observe, by the way, my red laser here is not working, but you can see here that it corresponds to the parts of the country with the worst drought patterns. Now, this is the same map, but this map shows the top 10 states in agriculture based on cash receipts. And 8 out of 10 of them are again in the driest regions. Now, California and North Carolina are outside the heavy drought zones. So of course that's promising for the future of food production for America, right? Well, not so fast. Let's take a look at groundwater. I want you to observe that the central and western parts of the United States, again, are in a serious crisis. Now, did you notice that in the Northeast, we have the least drought and we are most rich in groundwater, which bodes well for the future of food production in a changing climate. Now, let's look at markets. New York and the Northeast food systems also matter because they're home to our largest population centers and markets across the country, minus California. And the closer our food production centers are to those markets, the more cost efficient they are, and the more resilient our food system will be. And as we know from global supply chains being so fragile in the face of system shocks, well, remember this? Empty grocery store shelves. Where did people go to get more food? To the farmer's market from our local farms. We need to keep investing in New York farms to protect the resilience of our food system, and we need New York and the Northeast for the future of food production in the US. And if I had a crystal ball, I would foresee even greater demand for food from the Northeast in a changing climate. Now let's turn to the state of New York's food system in terms of its strengths and challenges. Strengths, just to say, I am barely scratching the surface of the amazing things about our food system. Not much time. These are a few highlights. We are number 2 in the Northeast, behind only Pennsylvania in terms of agricultural production. We are number 2 in the nation for food and beverage processing, second only to California. Agriculture is also certainly an important economic driver, even to this day, and we have, perhaps most importantly, a culture that values agriculture and farmers. And to our great benefit, we have political leaders who truly walk the talk, and we have some here today. Let's talk about challenges. So I think we know New York, with our cold winters, that gives us a shorter growing season, and that does make it harder for us to compete with regions that grow year-round. We also have extreme weather and, unfortunately, in some cases, too much water. But I gotta say, hey, that is a good problem to have and can be mitigated with water management systems. We also have aging farmers. The average age right now is about 57, and certainly, unfortunately, we have some next generation farmers that don't want to continue. So we need a new generation of beginning farmers to pick up the mantle. Now, I want to take a special spotlight on small and mid-sized farms. They are actually largely the norm in New York, representing 75% of New York's total farms. But even the larger scale farms here in New York are actually dwarfed when we compare them to the size of farms and ranches out west. And this is really due to the history of how Northeast homesteads were settled and established by the early settlers. It's because of development pressures, farmers parceling land to retire or pay debts, or certainly challenges in staying profitable when competing in a global marketplace that privileges economies of scale. But at the end of the day, my message is that we need our small and mid-sized farms to thrive for New York to stay a leading producer. So that means, and I'm speaking now a lot to our bankers in the room, the get big or get out model does not jive with the realities of food production in New York, where we have limited contiguous land parcels. We have to accommodate that reality, and we cannot let them die out, which is a common trend we are seeing, and we need to counteract that. We also have crushing cost of land. As I mentioned, we need our beginning farmers, and yet the price of land is a massive burden if you're a business in a startup mode. Now, USDA actually confirms that beginning farmers that have to pay these big mortgages are most likely to go under within 5 to 10 years. So we need new models that make land more affordable and accessible. I also want to note that USDA has found that the largest group of rising beginning farmers are actually coming from communities of color. And that leads me to the last point, which is, unfortunately, we have a racist and historic redlining history in many parts of our state, and communities of color simply don't have access in many cases. And I think that this is directly correlated to the folks who are now coming in to say, I want to be a beginning farmer, because they're fed up with a food system that has failed them. 98% of New York's farmland is white-owned, so they don't have the same privilege of inheritance. And I will say that CADE is doing some fundraising as we speak to conduct research around free and low-cost farmland access farmers for beginning, low-cost land access models for beginning of farmers. So now let's talk a little bit about opportunities and solutions. So I know that there are a lot of private sector investors and bankers in the room, also public sector. I'm going to speak to both of you. So for private sector, I've included some examples up top here of the type of areas where New York's food system is hungry to have your investment. But I also want to flag for you some realities that food and agriculture are unlike other private sector businesses. Food is very expensive to produce. Consumers expect a low cost, economies of scale are hard to meet in the region where we are, and returns are often razor thin and slow. But if you're an investor, don't let that chase you away. Instead, understand the nuance of the sector and be ready to learn and adapt. And one great example is the Farm Service Agency, FSA. That is the federal branch of our government that provides the lion's share of loans to farmers. They have spent decades learning about the nuance of the industry and have subprime low interest rates and other friendly sort of lending opportunities. Fortunately, I'm in a good place where the head of New York State's FSA is Jim Barber. He's my neighbor. I know him personally. If you want to learn more, I am happy to introduce you with a personal connection. Also, banks, you can leverage your obligations under the Community Reinvestment Act. You can invest with low-interest loans, simple interest loans with no-cost refinancing. You can offer angel investment business grants, or you can even invest in third-party agencies supporting ag enterprises. And in fact, we have some great folks in the room tonight who would love to receive your funds. Carlos Aguilera from the Latin Producers Association is here. I think we also hopefully have Olivia from the Black Farmer Fund. Great examples of third-party agencies ready to put hands and money in the right places. Go talk to them. Let's go on to public investment. So these three buckets, markets, farmer livelihoods, and land access, are some of the most important things that you can do for our food system. Upgrading direct-to-consumer farmers markets. Let's face it, consumers want to shop year-round, indoor, and anytime, day or night, similar to what the grocery stores do. Let's give consumers what they want, and it would be great if you could invest in that. Let's also encourage consumers to buy local. Lots of campaigns to learn from cities across our country. Now, the farm to institution market, I gotta say, New York State leads the nation in doing a great job on that. So well done, you have my hats off. But I might say let's go a little bit further to support, enable micro purchasing direct from farms. This norm of wholesale contracting continues to be a barrier for many to enter that market. Now, farmer livelihoods, lots to be done for tax reforms, including increasing deductions for farm income. We can certainly also consider establishing a farmer pension. Isn't food production a public service? Aren't we ensuring the survival of the human species? Great opportunity. And there's an extra benefit, which is if the farmers had a pension to retire, they'd be less likely to parcel off their land in order to retire. Now, land access, as I said, probably one of the biggest barriers to beginning farmers. Lots of models out there to learn from. For example, leasing public land for commercial farming has been piloted by the Parks Department in Philadelphia. Great opportunity. Another is subsidizing the cost of ag land, where you buy a farm at market value, flip it, and sell it at a lower cost to beginning farmers. This can help us also create a level playing field for those who didn't inherit. Finally, I want to touch on public and private partnership investment. Think broadband. Why are we not doing this for our food system? There is so much opportunity for us to co-invest in farm infrastructure, supply chain infrastructure, water management systems, and controlled environment agriculture, such as greenhouses and high tunnels to lengthen the growing season. Just to conclude, there are some great resources out there. This is one of many. I will give a special nod to this guide to funders. CADE published this a few years ago, specifically about what farm and food businesses are saying that they need from the investment community, and certainly the NYU Stern publication there. We're actually looking to do a second edition that's a bit more updated. In conclusion, I just want to say I'm so honored to be here among friends. I know we're all committed to the food system, and let us be united in our common purpose to brainstorm great ideas that can make a real difference in building a strong and resilient food system in New York. So thank you.